I'm Dr. Angie Stamm.
And I'm Kayla McGuire.
And this is Integrative Connections, a wellness community for pets and people.
Welcome to Integrative Connections podcast. I'm Dr. Angie Stamm. And today we have Brittany Massey, a horse trainer of 20 years experience. I've actually been a client of Brittany's for many years, over a decade. Mm-hmm. And both of my daughters learned to ride with her, and we've learned so much about horse husbandry from her. We've done pony club, we've done all kinds of cool things together. So I wanted to have her on so that we could learn about her specific training methods that she's developed and evolved over the past 20 years, because she kind of really has a unique, balanced approach to horse husbandry and training that I think could even cross over some of the aspects and things that we're going to learn from her today are going to even cross over into other species, like your relationship with your dog or your cat or your husband or your child.
Yes.
So I thought she would be a great person to learn from. And basically what she wants to talk about today are her perspective in achieving balance in all aspects of interacting with horses. So from protecting their physical abilities and health to their emotional, spiritual aspects, and also their mental needs. So she has some really interesting and I believe kind of very evolved level of experience in interacting with horses. And I'd love to hear more from her today. So excited. Can you tell us a little bit about your background growing up and how you came to the place that you are?
Yep. So it's been a long trek. I loved horses from the first moment. I met my first horse when I was 2 years old. We were at a friend's house. My dad put me up on her back and I wouldn't get off. I screamed and cried and threw a fit. I knew that was where I was supposed to be. So when I was 5, I got my first pony. We lived up on a ranch in Northern California, way Northern California, out on 160 acres. And my parents, late 1980s, early 1990s of them, turned me loose on this pony on 160 acres and let me just be a kid. Play, fall off, figure out how to get back on, make mistakes, and just really ride and be around horses for the joy of being around horses. And so that first little spark at 2 years old just became like an all-engulfing flame. This is all I do. It's my whole life. It always has been. After the cattle ranch, I took lessons at a local barn, still rode at home a little bit, but started to understand there were more sophisticated tools and techniques and that I was missing a lot of those things. I learned about leads and diagonals, and I had a lot of natural balance because I had just been riding bareback on our farm for a few years. But when I started to realize there was more out there, I got really hungry for that knowledge. And that led me to, I lived in Arizona for a couple years. I was like 10, 11. That led me to wanting to help rehab racehorses. And I was small enough and it was a permissive enough time in our culture that there were no signatures required. My dad dropped me off. They let me work at this rehabilitation facility. Very dangerous, I'm sure, but it's fine. And I learned a ton doing that. Really great for me. When I came back, when I came back to California, I had the chance to work off lessons at an Arabian training barn. So my first love is Arabians. My sister rode endurance for a long time. They're her first love as well. They're such emotionally in tuned, intelligent horses. And unfortunately, some of my first experiences were more domination of the horse. And I was a very strong kid and I had a lot of balance and I had no fear. So I was good at dominating horses, especially horses that are small and sensitive like an Arabian. But it never felt good to me, but I was good at it. I could ride kind of rank ones. I could kind of get around. Cowgirl around. Yeah. Like I could if it bucked, I was like, let me get on it and see how long I can ride. But it didn't feel good in my soul. But I got a lot of praise for it. So the praise counteracted some of how it felt not as good. And I saw my first glimpse of a gentleman named Buck Brannaman, who's now very famous, but at the time, this was a long time ago, was still just doing clinics and just a regular, guy, just a regular horseman out doing clinics, when I was about 13, and I watched him with the horses, and it changed my entire trajectory, and it changed everything I thought about these animals and how we can communicate with them and educate them. And so that led me on a little bit different path.
So Buck was really the one to kind of shift everything.
Yes. And I saved up all my money. I went to one day, I audited one day of the clinic, and I was like, that's how I want to be. Sold. But there was no internet. There was no, I didn't have access to a lot of information. So I was just sort of grasping at straws, trying to figure out and implement some of the things I had seen, which I did very poorly for a few years. Got hired when I was 16 years old to start colts at a farm in Michigan, which was a big change for me. But I was put in charge of all these young horses, and I just got to practice. And it was sort of like when I was a kid, I got to play and figure things out. There was no one watching me. I had no direction. But I figured out what worked, and I figured out what didn't. And I figured out what got me bucked off, and I figured out what didn't. And sometimes having that room is really important.
Cool.
Because it made me strive for better, and it allowed me to make mistakes and not be punished for those mistakes except by the horse. And so the horses really taught me how I wanted to be around them. It took me years to evolve, and I'm still evolving and still trying to be as good as I can be at this. But at that time, they were my mirrors. They could reflect back what I brought that day. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I met a wonderful woman. Her name's Tina Cornish. She has been a wonderful friend of mine for many years now. And she introduced me to one of my favorite and best mentors, hands-on mentors, who is Jim Wofford. He's now passed.
Who I have clinicked with as well.
Who you clinicked with as well. Yeah, we hosted clinics at our farm.
Yeah.
And
he was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, he's just the most educated horseman in America. I mean, by far, so educated and so interested. Mm-hmm. And I went and sat for him at a clinic, and I sat all day, sunrise to sunset, sat through the Q&A, watched everyone ride, was so interested, and he was wonderful at answering questions. And I think he saw my desire for information. It was the same desire he had, just wanting to know more, be educated. He sent me a book every Christmas, inscribed at some sort of training manual, thought-provoking about the horses. He would send these books in order for me to be able to read through them so we could talk about them later. So he could give me his perspective, I could give him my perspective. Just a really wonderful man. And the first person that made me feel like I could do this professionally. The first person that really said, stick with this. You can do this. You've got this. Yeah. When I was about the same age, I was making enough money to be able to start riding with Buck regularly. I've been able to do that pretty much annually, and now take clinics, or take my clients to his clinics.
Which I've done as well.
Which you've done as well.
Super great.
Super fun, very educational. He's also always evolving and developing. I think as a horseman, you never kind of finish that development. Sure. And so I've watched him just, it almost becomes like metaphysical with the horses. And so it's been amazing to watch his transformation. As good as he is, he's never done learning from the horses. And so that really inspires me to never be done learning from the horses. So those have been my two biggest influences. Losing Jimmy was really hard because he was my go-to phone call if I had a question or something I really got stuck on that I just couldn't figure out. So after losing him a couple years ago, I've had to get a little more self-aware and be able to step back from some situations and say, okay, what is it I'm looking at with this horse? Because what I'm doing isn't working. How do I readdress this in a way that works for this particular horse and the way they think and some of the trauma they hold or some of the stress they hold or whatever the case may be.
Sure. But he's taught you enough of a foundation that now you can kind of figure it out. Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah. He was really good about making me think and not just giving me answers, which is how good teachers are. Right. I've been in the hunter jumper world for about 15 years. I enjoy it because for me, the jumping is like a puzzle. I'm not as into the industry. The industry is hard for me.
It's hard.
But the jumping is a puzzle. It's fun and it's really interesting for the horses. So watching the horses figure that out has been really rewarding for me. I also like to move cows. I also like to swing a rope. I like to do a lot of things with the horses, but that's the industry. that I was drawn to. It's the sport I was drawn to. So that's my profession. But more than that, I mean, I have a team of riders that compete and show, you know, your daughters have ridden with me, you've shown with me. But above all, I think that I'm drawn to horses that maybe are struggling in a more traditional setting. And so a lot of the horses that come into me now are horses that haven't made it sort of out in the world, and we try and find a place for them where they can be successful at whatever level they're gonna be in.
Yeah, and I think that can kind of draw us into, we were going to talk about this at the end, but maybe we can talk about your plans to expand into rehab.
Yes. So my sister is a craniosacral body worker. She is incredible.
Amazing.
She's amazing. She worked closely with Tom Mays, who's amazing.
Who we're going to have on the podcast in July.
Amazing, yes. And I've known Tom for a very long time. He has been a wonderful mentor and teacher for my sister. She will continue to do continuing education because as like with Buck, he's always evolving and sort of developing his new technique as well. So her and I, we've always been close. We've always loved the horses. So we see this big need within, especially the sport horse industry, to not only do the physical care and rehabilitation, but a lot of emotional and mental repair. Because horses are being injured not because they're working too hard oftentimes, but because they're not moving their bodies in a way that is conducive to their comfort. And they are moving in stress. Yes, they're in a chronic stress pattern, and they're emotionally dysregulated. So they're doing erratic, difficult movement when all of this movement could be more streamlined for them.
Sure.
So we're trying to find a way to help people even before the horses are hurt.
Like a preventative.
Preventative, yeah. So if you're in rehab, that's great. Let us help you with that. But also, before your horse is really hurt, if you have just a little bit of a sore suspensory, give us a call. Give your horse 30 days off. Let us let them let down to help them prevent that tear.
Yeah. And I've watched you do this over and over again with horses, and it's really amazing. In fact, we went through it with my own horse.
Yes.
Through his rehab and injury, and it was really cool to see that process. So I think that's an area that you really excel.
Thank you.
So I think that it's exciting. And then you're going to be able to have the facility for it and the space, which is great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's go into kind of the concept of balance and how you create balance, because that really is what you wanted to talk about is balance in all the aspects of that. So maybe first let's talk about the physical aspect and how that relates to horses in general.
Yeah. So one of the things that I work on first when I get a horse in, I go directly to the groundwork because I want to see how they move independent of a rider. And I see a lot of chronic stress patterns in their musculature, muscle striping, sore back, really contracted abdominals, very weak thoracic sling, things that are detrimental long term. And you can't necessarily fight their conformation, but you can work with their conformation to teach them to move in more balanced patterns. Without knowing it, Buck Brannaman's been doing rehabilitative groundwork for his entire career. I think Ray Hunt knew what he was doing. Tom Norris knew what he was doing. The way they move the horses with low levels of stress and high levels of stretch and articulation, and in a way that allows the horse not to feel tripped or out of balance, not only builds emotional security because they feel strong and balanced through their body, and they know how to move their feet in a way that keep them upright, because they're prey animals. They don't want to tip over.
It's like horse yoga.
It's horse yoga. And if you feel strong and secure and balanced, you feel like you can get away from predators. Horses that feel unbalanced and chronically stressed and dysregulated,
They have to be on the defense.
They're constantly on high alert, so they're spookier. They're more apt to hurt themselves. They're more apt to go through a fence. They're more apt to pace. They're more apt to have stall vices, the whole gamut of things. Yeah. So if you can address the physical movement, a lot of times you can eliminate some of those chronic stress patterns. You're also allowing their body to reset. It can help with metabolism. It helps with lymphatic drainage. It helps with adrenal fatigue. There's so many things that good balanced movement, just like for people, it works for horses.
Yeah. So what does that look like from a practical aspect? If you're just the average horse owner, could you just learn some groundwork, like some of Beck's groundwork techniques, and just incorporate that into your routine. Even a few times a week. You don't have to do it every day, kind of thing. Like, it can be pretty practical, right?
Very practical. And as horses are developing some of these skills on the ground, basic things like being able to lead with proper distance, that simply is regulation on the horse's part,
right,
and encourages them to rock back and forth as you're moving. I mean, very basic things that can change a horse's life, where they're not being, you're not being dragged by your horse, being led around, where their shoulder's into you, their head is out, and you're just being, water skied on a lead rope.
Yeah.
So,
and my
really
experience
simple.
with like learning that stuff, the basics of that stuff with you, and going to Beck, is that there is a bit of a learning curve.
Yes.
It's not something that you can pick up in 5 minutes or even a weekend. Like, it's going to take you a while. But then once you have the basics, then you're good, and you can then build on that slowly. But there is a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit frustrating first, because I never feel like I'm doing it correctly. And then I don't want to mess up the horse.
Yes, that's 100%.
But also, they're pretty resilient.
They're pretty resilient. They've already gone through a lot. They're probably fine.
It's fine.
The hardest part for me is I'm still messing it up, and I've been doing it for 20 plus years.
And clearly something's working. So.
But it's working. So I think
don't
sometimes
get stuck in your head like you have to do it perfect.
Yeah, you don't have to be perfect. I think that you can always strive to be better. There is really no perfection. And in part of this balance, it's like you have to be balanced yourself. So you have to be able to look at that and say, I am trying this thing, and my intention is very good, and my energy is very positive, and I'm doing this with the understanding that I want to make this horse better. The horses read that. Totally. They're not trying to make their lives harder either. So if you come at it with clarity, consistency, and kind of a balanced and emotionally regulated soul, you put that intention into the animal, and they understand, and then they will start to get things right. And you might only have one good step. That's enough. You might have 2 good steps the next day. That's enough. But if they are slowly improving, and it does take someone on the ground to help you. I've had a lot of help with this for a lot of years, and I still miss opportunities, don't release at the right time. I mean, that's just normal. That's just us. But the horses are very forgiving of that, and they will start to understand the body patterns that feel good, and they will gravitate to those.
Sure. And I guess that kind of leads into the more emotional, spiritual side of things, because that is a segue. They can't deal with their emotional traumas until their body is comfortable, kind of
a lot of
out
times.
of that stress pattern.
Yeah.
And then you start to go to the next thing, which is like the emotional, spiritual. Is that, would you say that's correct?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing for me is that it's a little bit nuanced, but you have to balance those things a little bit together. And that's why I want to talk about like the balance of it. You can have a horse that is a physical specimen, right? Like physically fit, strong, all the things.
No body pain.
They're coming up fine for the vet, but you keep having these issues like they're spooky, or they're distracted, or they're whatever the case may be, missing lead change, whatever. You have to look a little bit more at like, are they mentally stimulated all day? Are they regulated by friends? Do they have other horses to interact with? Are they calm in their stalls? Are they exhibiting certain behaviors that are undesirable, like destroying things, cribbing, wood chewing? A lot of times you won't have a perfect physical specimen and those things, but sometimes you have a horse that's pretty sound, but mentally and emotionally a pain in the ass. Yeah. Literally. And so then you have to say, okay, so you're not physically that broken down, but what is dysregulated in your body? And that's where you have to tap into some of that emotional stuff. They might be holding a lot of stress, holding a lot of trauma. They're naturally high anxiety like a person, or they're naturally a little shut down and depressive. Horses are on the same spectrum that we are. They go, there's a long range. I have some horses that come in and people think, oh, they're so quiet and well behaved. They're just so incredibly shut down.
Yeah, they're just numb.
They're numb.
Numb to the world.
Numb to the world. So they don't show body
sad.
pain because they just section that body part off. I don't feel my back, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And that's sad as well. So trying to find a place for the horses to be able to regulate themselves and then co-regulate with the animals and people around them. And because our barn is full of pretty regulated horses, it helps because they move in and their neighbors are pretty regulated. And then the handlers are well regulated. And then they start to go, and then their pasture mates are well regulated. And they're like, wow,
People have their shit together here.
Yeah, it feels good to be around all these really like emotionally stable creatures. And that usually helps them the most, is just being with other horses that are like, hey man, we're good here. We don't get picked on. We're not scared. Everything makes sense. And then when you do start to incorporate the physical, which can be very hard for horses that have not had that program and not had a little bit of like, hey, I expect you to stand this way. I expect you to have manners. I expect you to move in balance. Don't get erratic. It actually helps them with the physical because they're starting to get that emotional regulation.
Yeah, super cool. And then there also is a mental aspect of the balance too, right? Like teaching them, giving them mental stimulation, learning.
Yeah, learning skills. So a lot of times we have this culture of just domination, right? We get on and we pull their head in and we kick them forward and we steer them where we want to go. And a lot of times for these horses, they're put in a box they don't understand and they travel places, right? They're put in a horse trailer and travel places. They're put in new stalls they don't understand. They deal with it well because we've bred them for generations to be compliant. I mean, we rode horses into battle. It's like there's so much they'll do for us. But are they understanding how to learn, how to ask questions, and then are we giving them the time when they ask a question to process through it? So one of the mental things for me is setting up questions for the horses and allowing them to figure it out. Like even introducing jumps to a green horse or a horse that's had a little bit of an episode of stopping or spooking, letting them walk up and investigate. Some horses are tactile, just like people. Some horses are visual. Some horses are auditory. If they're hypersensitive auditory, I'll put them in situations where they can hear noises and then ask the question and actually look at what it is. And then I can go, oh, see, that's no big deal. Good job. And then a horse that's really visual, maybe have a lot going on around them, like maybe they're a little nervous about other horses, have really regulated, quiet horses around them that let them walk, I'll stand on the horse in the middle. The other horses can walk around me. They can change eyes and they can understand that this can be a safe space so that they are learning independent of me. I'm not forcing them to do this. I'm just letting them be in a situation where they can go, oh, these horses moving around me feel pretty safe. If they need to touch a jump, walk up, touch a roll top, touch flowers, whatever it happens to be, then the horse goes, oh, I'm tactile. I need to touch this first. I can now see it. I can touch it. I can smell it. That makes sense. It doesn't look like it's harmful. And I'm not making them go up to it. I'm just offering if they'd like to investigate. And horses are so curious naturally. They will want to investigate things. Auditory, visual, it doesn't matter what it is. But you have to give them that time. And then there has to be clarity about, okay, you can have this time to think on what that is. Now you understand. Now I have an expectation that you can step over this pole on the ground, step over these flowers, work quietly while there's sound around you, things like that. So you just up the level of tolerance for them, but because they've learned a low level of tolerance, each layer becomes easier.
Right. Makes sense. It's kind of like training dogs, I'm sure, too. Not that I'm a dog trainer, but I mean, you could apply that too.
100%.
Training other animals too.
You can do it with training children.
Yeah, children
it works.
too.
I teach a lot of kids and adults. It's the same thing. You just up the level of tolerance and then you up the skill set each day. You don't ask them to go from their ABCs to, reading a novel.
Right.
You say, okay, I've taught you, A through Z. Let's make our first word. And you just have to do it in steps.
Yeah.
So that the horses are understanding. And you will have backslide. You will have plateaus. Like you have to be okay with it not being perfect.
Yeah.
And understanding that they're going to have good days, bad days, wake up on the wrong side of the stall, have a headache, whatever the case may be. They're just like us.
Right.
And then understand how much you can push for more and when you have to back off and let them just have a good day instead of a learning day.
Right.
Or a good day instead of a physical day.
Intuition comes in. You have to be able to read them a little bit, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. What would be, I want to say your biggest regret, but I want to rephrase that into not your biggest regret, but something that you look back on and you say, wow, that was I would choose differently now, but I learned from that. Like in terms of your training methods.
Yeah. So I would say, well, my biggest regret is that I wasn't able to or didn't know how to access information sooner about some of these practices that are horse-based. And
For example.
So, and a good example would be, I had a horse for a long time. His name was Tucker. He was wonderful, but he had
Tucker.
a bucking issue.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker the bucker. And I didn't have the skill set or the knowledge to do right by him when he probably needed it most. I was 20 years old. I was trying to do this groundwork that I was kind of bad at, but practicing on him. And I think looking back, we didn't x-ray backs back then. We didn't x-ray necks. I would have x-rayed his back. I'm sure he had kissing spine. I'm sure there's a lot of rehabilitative movement I could have done for him that would have been far more beneficial than what I was doing. Mm-hmm. He could have used a little Robaxin for relaxing his muscles. There's a lot of things I could have done. Shockwave, injections, anything to help him.
Yeah.
But instead, I just thought if I rode him harder and more, I would get it across to him. And I did make him fitter, which did help. So fitness will help, but when they're jumping and then they're still bucking, there's probably a correlation. So that's one of my biggest regrets, because I feel like he was like my guinea pig, and I jumped him a lot. And I got him back in his old age, used him for lessons. Like, I could have done better by him for sure if I had known better.
Sure.
But I have a lot of those regrets from my young life.
Yeah,
just
but
being
I mean, you learn.
Uneducated.
And you would never do that now. So
yeah, exactly.
What about some of your best success stories or most challenging cases of horses that you brought on and have been able to successfully rehabilitate?
So one of my favorites, he just came back in the barn, Roni, who your daughter Quinn rode.
Yep.
So Roni was, he was just a difficult temperament, right? He's one of those horses. He's a pony. He is a quarter horse Welsh cross, and he's a chestnut roan. And he's incredibly intelligent, incredibly spicy. And he had a lot of just kind of tough experiences. My very good friend Sarah had him as a baby, and she did, everything that she knew to do at the time to do right by him. I think she was being guided in a way that was not successful, and she was trying to do what her trainers were asking and what was being recommended. And he kind of imploded, and she finally sent him off to a cowboy. That wasn't terribly successful either. My sister and I actually went together and picked him up, and he had one shoe on, and he was...
you couldn't shoe him without drugs.
Oh, no, you couldn't shoe him without drugs. So he had one shoe on, and he had a heavy blanket on in the middle of April, and it was quite warm.
Because you couldn't take his blanket off?
I think you could take his blanket off. I think it was a little bit of a punishment type thing.
Okay.
I think they were like, well, if you're going to be a pain, we're going to make you hot and sweaty before we ride you. That's the feeling I got about that. And he had big raw red marks in his mouth and big raw red marks where they'd been spurring him, because he was just tough. He was one of those ponies that was like, I will not do this thing, and I will die trying not to do it. So we brought him home, let him down, and my sister actually started ponying him off of other horses, which is a great way to let a horse go forward, because he was really sticky. He'd rear and he'd spin and he'd try to tip over. And so letting a horse follow other horses is a great means to get them motivated. So we'd get on our good horses and we'd just pony him all over the place. He hated the arena. He'd walk in the ring and he'd stand up. So we had a ring with no sides. So we started riding him in the ring, following another horse, and then out of the ring. And we'd go out around the property, we'd come back and we'd do it again. So the arena became part of his kind of playtime. Started doing some round pen work with him, getting him to where we could respectfully ask him to turn both directions, hook on, come to the middle, and that we could just spend time with him. He bit, he would kick. He was just,
I remember even trying to get a vaccine in him.
Couldn't vaccinate him.
It was super dangerous.
It was dangerous. He was dangerous. And he's a big pony. He's 14'2", and he's stout.
He's still kind of dangerous.
He still has moments, and he's very good with me.
But not usually.
But he's really good with me because he knows me and he understands the expectation. Mm-hmm. But if you come at him just wrong, whatever was built in there, it comes right back to the surface. So you have to just be conscientious about how you handle him.
Yeah.
But man, he turned into a great pony. He was the bravest thing still the bravest horse I've ever had. Will jump anything. Any cross-country jump, any show jump, anything. Took Quinn from little bitty first cross rails all the way through, I think she jumped him 3.6.
And she did cross-country on him, too.
And did cross-country on him. He's wonderful. He has a wonderful mouth now. He's lovely to flat. you know, he's just done it all. He's gone through the pony,
But it
all the way
took
through the
you
pony
years.
jumpers.
It took you years.
Years and years. He's taught a lot of my riders, and he teaches you finesse, and he teaches you to be kind, and he teaches you clarity. Because if you're not clear, he'll take advantage of you. But if you're not kind, he's overreactive. So you have to find the balance. And he has to have a lot of mental stimulation. He has to go out in a herd. He can't live alone. Like, he needs all of that interaction to feel regulated. But he's 18 or 19 this year, sound as a dollar, happy as can be. He spent the last couple years out, turned out. A kid that rode with me for a long time, I said, take him home and trail ride him. Just have fun on him. It's his favorite thing to do. And he's just had a wonderful couple years. Came back in the barn, did his first lesson last night. Just the way he always was. No questions.
Cool.
Yep.
That's such a great story.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
I love him so very much.
Wow. Well, it was awesome chatting with you. Is there anything else that you want to say in terms of just maybe advice for anyone who either owns a horse, rides a horse? Like, what's your just general advice?
So my general advice is be patient with them and be patient with yourself, and don't get stuck on one thing and force that to happen. Find the thing that works for you.
Don't have something set in your head of how it's going to look.
Right.
Don't have a preconceived notion of what you think.
Expectation is the killer of joy.
Yeah.
Have joy with your horses. They know if you're there in enjoyment, and they know if you're there and you're stressed. So come home from work, come home from school, drop all that at the door, go into the barn and have joy with your horses. No matter what you're doing, no one has the expectation except you. So go in and have fun, go on trail rides, do new things, try new things. You won't hurt them, you won't ruin them. Let them experience being horses. Let them live outside if you can. Let them have friends.
Just don't take my hunter jumper on a trail ride in the wilderness.
You can probably take your hunter jumper on a trail ride in the wilderness. Maybe not horse camping for 5 days. But
I mean, there's limitations.
You know, and be smart about it. Like, if a horse has never been horse camping and they're 15 years old,
probably
maybe that's not the first excursion they have into the wilderness. But go on a nice trail ride. Take her to the lake. You know, there's things that you can do with them that can be done safely. And just do it with joy and do it with the mindset of, I love doing this. You know, my favorite saying at the barn, ain't none of us going to the Olympics. It's not that serious.
Right.
It's not brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. We're just here to have fun, right? Like, we're here to enjoy ourselves.
Right? It's not, Well, there are people who obviously show and train competitively, and that's a different story. But for the average, person who wants to enjoy their horse, like, don't take it so seriously. I think that's really good advice. Like, just try to, switch more into the joy of it instead of having expectations of what you think you should be. Yeah.
Yeah, and just take the time to let them figure things out, let you figure things out.
Yeah.
And don't get hung up on any of the Instagram reels, because none of them are real.
Yeah, and I think it's a great sport because you can do it at any age and ability and physical ability. Like my mom, who doesn't ride anymore, she can still have this horse that she cares for and that other people help ride it, and it's a whole relationship. So I think it's great to have like a broader perspective of how you can have different relationships with your horse,
And for me, like, even horse sport, like, it's made up.
Right.
Like, we made it up. We made up reining. We made up cutting. They're based on things that we used to actually need horses for, but it's all fake, right? Like, in the grand scheme, even the Olympics, it's fake. We made it up.
Right.
So, like, those are human imposed things. And I like to show and compete. And I loved having a derby horse. He was wonderful. But do what is right by the horse. Don't get so hung up on the competition that it ruins the joy for you. Make it fun, make it enjoyable, and love what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.